Kyler Murray was 3 years ago, first overall pick of the Arizona Cardinals, just 1 year after they traded up to number 10 to get Josh Rosen. They loved Kyler Murray so much, they kicked Josh Rosen to the curb and moved on to Murray. And now it looks like they're not going to move on from Murray. Today, Steve Keim, the general manager of the team, said the words that need to be said if we want to even begin to believe that a guy isn't going to be traded. You can't say zero intention or no intention or any formulation that includes the word intention. What you have to say is what Keim said today. There is zero chance that Murray gets traded. We are not trading him, period. No way, no how, not happening. That's how you get people to begin to believe it. And even then, circumstances can change. But that doesn't deliberately leave the door cracked open. When intention is part of the formulation of the message from the team, the door necessarily is open. Right now, for Murray to be traded by the Cardinals, the door is slammed shut, Charean.
It is slammed shut, accordingly, by Steve Keim. But then the question becomes, Mike, when is Kyler Murray going to show up? Is he going to show up for the mandatory minicamp if he doesn't have a new deal? Is he going to show up for training camp if he doesn't have a new deal? Is he going to show up for week 1 if he doesn't have a new deal? We know that his side, Eric Burkhart, his agent, has pulled his original offer. And we know that the Cardinals have not countered with anything yet. So that's part of the problem now. So how quickly they can get this contract resolved is going to determine probably when Kyler Murray shows up, Mike. But I do expect Kyler Murray to play for the Cardinals this season. The question becomes, when is he going to get that new deal?
And it's far too late for Kyler Murray or Eric Burkhart or anyone to say this has nothing to do with Kyler Murray's desire to get the contract he has earned. It's too late for that. When Eric Burkhart posted that small font, single-spaced manifesto several weeks ago, it was clear that there is a concern regarding the contract offer that hasn't been made by the Cardinals, the proposal that had been made by Burkhart and then had since been rescinded. And now all of a sudden, and it quite possibly, because it was a week ago the last time this bubbled up, with 2 weeks to go until the draft. Now here we are a week to go until the draft, and I think that Murray and Burkhart have realized a trade's not happening. It's just not happening. So now they need to bide their time and wait and see what kind of offer the Cardinals will make when it's time to negotiate. And the Cardinals intend to take care of him this summer. So Murray has had some sort of epiphany, or he's understood there's nothing else he can do. He's not willing to go play baseball. He's not willing to turn his back on the Cardinals. So now we're getting a little bit of this, hey, guys, what's the big deal? What's everybody looking at? Yeah, everything's fine. And that's fine. However someone needs to back away from the brink, I don't mind. I'm happy to see him back away from the brink, although I would have liked to have had the chaos that would have come from a potential trade. We don't need to say, oh, Kyler, come on now. You were trying to lay the foundation for something. It doesn't matter. He's decided, apparently, that he wants to stay with the Cardinals. He's willing to wait for them to make the offer. He's backing off from this sense of acrimony that was out there. And there's the tweet. I want to win Super Bowls with the Cardinals. Arizona is home. That's the bottom line. And that's the response to the comment from Patrick Peterson, former teammate, who said that he doesn't feel like they're putting the team in a position to be successful, and Kyler Murray's not going to sit around and wait. He's made it clear now he wants to win Super Bowls, that's his motivation. And that's fine, but it's also his motivation, Charean, to get paid.
Well, it is, Mike. And here's the other thing. It just doesn't seem like there's been a big land rush to trade for Kyler Murray. I mean, usually we hear when there's disgruntled players, we hear, oh, well, in the Deebo Samuel instance, the Jets would be interested. We haven't heard a single team that has made a call to the Cardinals. And you would think that teams in need of a quarterback would make that call if they were interested. Knowing what they've heard this offseason about Kyler Murray wanting a new deal, we've heard none of that. And I guarantee you, if anyone had made a call, we would hear about it. We would hear at least teams have called. We might not know specific teams, but I promise you we would have heard that. And we've heard nothing. It's been crickets. So I don't know that the Cardinals even got any calls about Kyler Murray, and maybe they thought he's not being traded. But it is interesting to me that we've heard none of that talk of teams making the calls to the Cardinals for a trade for Kyler Murray. And maybe it's that memory, that lingering memory of that final game against the Rams when he was flat out terrible, worst passer rating of his career. He was not good, 3 interceptions. And he didn't finish the season off well, Mike, because of the injury that he had, just like he did the year before. So maybe there's some of that, too, that teams are thinking, we don't know still how good this guy is, even though he's been to back-to-back Pro Bowls.
And, Charean, it's not just an issue of Eric Burkhart sending a message loud and clear and then waiting to see if there's any jostling, if there's any discussion, if there's any sense of interest. He can also, even though it's tampering for the teams to take these calls, this happens all the time, you can start talking to general managers. You represent players throughout the league. There are occasions to talk to people. At the end of the conversation, you can try to poke around to see if that team would have any interest in Kyler Murray. And it's quite possible that Eric Burkhart found out there really isn't any interest out there. And sometimes what happens is the agent has to do it on behalf of a client who needs that cold splash of water in the face. That maybe the client thinks more of his ability, thinks more of his market, thinks more of his desirability than he should. And the agent at that point has no choice but to go out and find that piece of humble pie that gets force-fed to the client. That could be part of this, too, that Kyler had something that bordered on the delusional as to what he thought the market would be if there was any possibility he could be traded. So they put it out there, they poke around, and Sims said when this all first came up weeks ago, there's going to be teams that just will not consider Kyler Murray. This isn't like Aaron Rodgers. Wait a minute, stop the presses. Let's consider what we have at quarterback and whether or not we could get Aaron Rodgers. There will be teams that say, Kyler Murray, 5'10", no way, not a chance, not interested. And that necessarily limits the market, limits the interest, and puts him in a position where he's now backing off from the brink. And that feels like that's what's happening. They're not trading him. No one is trying to bang down the Cardinals' door to trade for him, and Kyler Murray realizes he's got to love the one he's with.
Yeah, and Mike, now we go back to what does Kyler Murray think he's worth and what do the Cardinals think he's worth? And as you've pointed out, that may be a huge gap, and it may be a huge gap that they can't overcome. That will be interesting to see where that ends up and how much Kyler Murray ends up getting. He is going to get a contract. He's going to, if the Cardinals can't work it out eventually, they will trade him. They will find somebody to take him on and to pay him. But the question becomes, how much are you going to pay Kyler Murray? And now they've got to figure that out, Mike. That's not going to be easy.
And it's not, because this gets back to the original point, and this is why I think things got off the rails in the first place. I firmly believe you're going to have Kyler Murray in the range of $45 to $50 million a year as to what he's looking for, if not more, because the market is always changing. The salary cap is always going up. You have to think about where it's going to be, not where it currently is. And I can see the Cardinals in the range of 30 to 35. So how do you get the two circles on the Venn diagram to meet and work out a long-term deal that everyone is happy with? That is the key. And the longer the Cardinals wait, the more expensive it's going to get. That's part of it as well. So we'll see if they can work something out. And, here's the bottom line. At the end of the day, wherever the Cardinals land on that range you see there from 1 to 10, wherever their bottom line number is, if Kyler Murray just doesn't want to go through the stress and strain of a fight, holding out, trying to get traded, getting the fans mad at him, and they shouldn't be, but you know how it works. They do get mad at the player, and they line up behind the laundry. He may take the best offer the Cardinals make, even if Eric Burkhart is saying to him, don't do it. At the end of the day, it's the client's decision. And if he wants to take the best offer that's on the table, if the money's good enough, even if it's not great enough, if it's good enough, he'll take it.
Which his good friend Baker Mayfield should have done last year. And Baker and Kyler are good friends, so they're talking, and Baker's giving him advice. Don't wait. Get the money while you can. So we'll see how quickly Kyler comes to terms with the Cardinals, Mike, if he shows up, how this is going to play out. But there's still a lot to this story. This doesn't completely end things. I do think he plays for the Cardinals this season, but there's still a lot of questions in here that we have yet to be answered. Fortunately for the Cardinals, it's a few months yet until that first game. And as J.J. Watt said, they don't need Kyler Murray until that first game.
It doesn't end the story. It just pushes it to the back burner. And the other reality, I know I'm repeating myself. If you watch the show enough, PFT Live or this show, that you've heard me say it before, thank you very much for paying attention. But it bears repeating. Not every bet that you make on yourself is a winner. We love to heap praise on people who bet on themselves when they win. When they bet on themselves and lose, we don't talk about it because that's not a good story. Because you know what? If we talk about it too much, other people may not bet on themselves. We like it when people bet on themselves. Hey, he's betting on himself. Ooh, what a story. He's betting on himself. Hey, Joe Flacco, he bet on himself. It goes back to him and even before that. Well, the truth is, Baker Mayfield bet on himself last year and lost. That's why he's out in Cleveland. That's why he's rebuilding his career. He could have had $30 million a year if he wasn't, in his mind, valuing himself a lot higher than that, and rightfully so. That's the problem. He was right to push those chips into the middle of the table last year, but it didn't work out. So let's keep the same energy when a guy bets on himself and loses, not to rub his face in it, but to just make sure people understand. When you bet on yourself, it's not a no-risk proposition. If you got nothing to lose, you're not making a bet. It's just a contest that you're entering. You only bet when you stand to lose. Baker Mayfield stood to lose, and he did. And now Kyler Murray, and we don't know what the contents of those communications are, but it very well could be, hey, Kyler, you better be careful. Get what you can. Get what you can while you can. And maybe once the final number is on the table from the Cardinals, and he calls up his good friend Baker Mayfield and says, here's what they offered. What should I do? Baker would say, boy, if I could go back a year and take that, I would take that. That may be the best thing the Cardinals have going for them by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, and you look at a guy like Lamar Jackson, Mike, it's the same thing. He's pushing those chips in the middle of the table and betting on himself. It may work out great like it did for Dak Prescott a couple years ago. It may not work out like it did for Baker Mayfield, but that's part of it. And these players do believe in themselves, and they believe they're going to prove that they're worth the money, that they're worth more money than the team right now is willing to pay. So that's where Lamar is. May or may not be where Kyler Murray is. We'll find out.
I don't know that Lamar is betting on himself. I don't know what Lamar is doing. I think Lamar is standing there in the casino, looking at the table, wondering when he's going to go have a seat. Meanwhile, chips are falling out of his pocket unbeknownst to him. I think that is what Lamar Jackson's current status is.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.